Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your latest edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, hosted by myself, Craig Gray. This is the Independent Rangers podcast made for fans by fans, and all of our content is absolutely free. You can get us over at gersnet.co.uk and on Twitter at gersnetonline. Where you can also get a wonderful forum, some access to articles, and a good history archive as well. We're live on YouTube this evening. To ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. Get involved in the conversation about Rangers Football Club. And we will be on all of our usual podcast providers in the coming days as well. Just before I introduce my guest this evening, I need to give a shout out to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They are a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company, and they've been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for many years. And we're absolutely delighted that they're backing our podcast. You can get them over at forrestprecisioneng.com. And you can also visit the Forrest Precision Executive Lounge, a stunning new hospitality area within the historic main stand. For information on how to book this unique and intimate space, you can email the club via hospitality@rangers.co.uk. My guest this evening, Gersnet veteran, Mr. Colin Armstrong. Colin, did you have a good international break?
I'm at the stage now I quite enjoy the international breaks because it just gives me a break. You know, I used to dread them, but I quite enjoy them now. Just to get away from Rangers for a couple of weeks, to be honest with you. So yeah, I have quite enjoyed it. Yeah, I didn't get a game last week. I normally go and watch Pollock or something when it's international break, but I never got a game in last week. So it's been a football-free experience. I was quite looking forward to Rangers coming back this week, and then stuff happened this morning that sort of scuppered that. So yeah, but I'm sure we'll discuss it.
Yep. I mean, it was weird for me because it was a bit of a mental break. I don't know if you kind of felt the same, where I genuinely just put, after that Old Firm game, I know you were saying off air, you just felt totally despondent after it.
Yeah.
I was kind of similar, and then I was just like, I'm not going to let this bother me for like at least a couple of weeks. And then, even a couple of weeks later, yesterday, late last night, the story about Raskin broke, you're like, oh, fuck. We're back.
Yeah.
We're back to square one. We'll just start with that then, Colin. I mean, what's going on? Are you Team Raskin or Team Russell?
I mean, the sort of nature of it. That's what troubles me. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know what to make of it at all, to be honest with you. I look at social media, and it's obvious to me that the majority of the fans seem to think that Martin's the issue here, but I don't know. I really don't know. All I do know is it's another distraction that we don't need. When it all broke round about the Celtic game that there was an issue between the two of them, I was convinced that Raskin would go in the window. I felt we had to sell him in this window anyway. If there was no new deal or extension to his current deal, I think we've been stung so many times in the past with losing players for either nothing or less than their actual value because we've not sold them at the optimum moment. So I'd been sort of saying all summer, we need to sell Raskin. It's, people are talking about building the team around him. I'd be like, that's great, but only if he signs an extension or signs a new deal. So when there was no sign of that, I was like, well, we need to get him out the door. And then when all that stuff happened, you're like, right, let's get him out the door. And then he doesn't go, out the door. And so it's kind of it's probably the worst case scenario that you could have wished for, that he stayed. There still appears to be an apparent issue between him and Martin, and we've missed the opportunity to sell him probably a really, really good price. So it's just, yeah, and what makes it really frustrating is they're a shambles. That mob over the road are an absolute shambles at the moment. And it seems to me that when they regress, we regress even further. You know what I mean? Rather than getting a bit of momentum and trying to put in a proper challenge this season, we just seem to be going the other way. So, yeah, it's certainly unwelcome. I don't really know what to make of it, and I don't really want to go down the side of Team Raskin or Team Martin. What I will say is, Russell Martin's struggling at the moment. He's struggling to convince really much of the fan base at all. I think the vast majority have turned and have made their mind up on him. I think Raskin knows that, and some of the stuff he's been doing in social media and his dad and all the rest of it, sort of playing to the gantry a wee bit. Russell Martin needs a result, and he needs a result tomorrow. And I would suggest he also needs a performance. The only way that supporters will start siding with him on this, and that's obviously what he wants and what the club wants, is if his team's winning. You know, if can you imagine that, you know, if this was Walter Smith doing something like this to a player like Raskin, there wouldn't be any doubts about who the supporters would be backing. They would be saying, we trust Walter Smith. We think he's got good judgment. If he's punishing a player or taking issue with a player and not putting him in team squads, there's a good reason for it. But no one really has that belief in Martin that you know, the decisions he's making are good ones. So he needs to start getting us on side. He needs to start getting supporters on side, and the only way he can do that is by winning games, and not just winning. You know, putting in performances that resemble what he talks about. So he talks about, you know, high press, high energy, running more than any other team, and all that kind of stuff. You know, a couple of wee snippets apart, we've not really seen any of that. And in recent weeks, I would argue it's regressing. It's going the other way. Rather than getting closer to that, we're getting further away from it. So that needs to change. If Russell Martin wants us to be on his side with this whole situation with Nico Raskin, then he needs to start winning games starting tomorrow.
No, absolutely. Forget Team Russell or Team Raskin. We're Team Rangers here at Gersnet. That's what we are. We're not taking sides.
Yeah.
To be fair, though,
I'm sitting on the fence. That's essentially what
aye. To be fair, I don't want to say I've picked sides, but if I had skewed towards a side in recent weeks, it was Raskin. But see, when that story broke last night and I heard Russell Martin's press conference today, I started to go on the fence like you a wee bit, Colin, because the more I'm thinking to it, that's twice now. So it was, a couple of days before the Old Firm game, now a couple of days before the Hearts game. It's been leaked to the media, I think STV mostly, that he's not going to be in the squad. Now, is that something that the club would do? Or is that something that maybe Raskin's team's doing now? We don't know, right? We can't say one way or another who does it, but I can't see the club or like Russell Martin telling like the comms guy at Ibrox or get a message out saying that this guy isn't in the squad for whatever reason. Because I mean that doesn't make sense from like a preparing a team point of view, from trying to keep the opposition on your toes. It doesn't seem like the type of thing that the club would do. So for me, there's no point in elbows, but I think that the leaks, certainly about him not being in the squad the last couple of games, to me, the balance of probabilities is that it's probably people in Raskin's camp that's maybe pushed that out.
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that. And obviously, I mean, the teams have been getting leaked every week pretty much since Martin came in. Now, again, I'm not blaming Raskin, but it's another thing that just adds to this whole kind of unnecessary drama of, you know, fallouts between the players and managers and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, and he made a couple of comments today in the press, the presser about, you know, I'm having to regain the trust of the players and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I'm assuming he was talking about on the park, but given the sort of stuff you're talking about, you know, toxic leaks and stuff getting to certain media outlets, you do wonder if he was kind of referencing that, you know, he needs to fall into line. But without the solid information, I mean, the only people that really know the situation will be the Raskin and Martin and a few others within the club. So it just needs to get sorted, because, as I said earlier on, I genuinely think, I mean, Philip Clement must be, you know, pulling whatever little amount of hair he has out, because, you know, Celtic never started like this when he was there. They never look. I mean, I know they've still been getting over the line in games and stuff like that, but they just look so disorganised and so. There doesn't seem to be a sense of unity about them. You know, I noticed the other day on Twitter that it was like the 40th anniversary of Jock Stein dying, and not a thing came out of that Celtic Twitter account.
They are desperate for Kilmarnock to beat them on Sunday so that they can have a meltdown.
Yeah,
like they're desperate for something like that to happen.
It feels like
to beat them in the cup next week.
It feels. I sort of looked at it. It feels like Celtic are actually trolling their own support now, and there's just a real sense of, you know, distrust between disconnect between the fan base and the board, and a lot of the players don't look happy, and you're looking at it going, they are there for the taking. They are there in terms of, if we got our house in order, we could really have a good chance of winning the title this season, and yet we seem to be worse than we've ever been. You know what I mean? It's just so frustrating. So yeah, it needs. I mean, the stuff between Raskin and Martin, that needs to get buried soon. It would be beneficial for Martin for it to finish, because he's got enough on his plate. He just needs to start winning football games. And Nico Raskin wants to play in the World Cup. He's obviously got eyes in playing in that World Cup next summer, so he needs to be playing. So there has to be some sort of mutual agreement where both parties come to an agreement and bury whatever sort of personal issues they have with one another, and just form a working relationship that benefits both parties. But we'll have to wait and see if that happens, because obviously he's not in the squad tomorrow. You would assume he's fit because he played through the week and he scored for Belgium. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But it's just an unnecessary and an unwelcome distraction at a time when I think that mob over the road are there for the taking.
Aye, you made an interesting point there in terms of like relationships. So you've got the fans to the manager to the board, and at Celtic it seems that all three are clunky and disconnected. Whereas at Ibrox, it does seem that at least the manager and the board have got that connection. Yeah. But it's just us. Maybe it's us that's the problem. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I was one of the few that was quite happy with Martin being appointed. I felt there was an opportunity that he could bring a really good brand of football. You know what I mean? And if we were playing the way that he says we should be playing, you think that should be enough to beat pretty much any team in Scotland. And then, in my opinion, it comes down to the games between us and Celtic in terms of who goes on to win the championship. But there's just no evidence of that. You know what I mean? So I think the fans are right to be, unhappy and feel a bit disconnected. I think some of the stuff's been a bit extreme and unnecessary. But my biggest problem with the situation now is, the little snippets that we saw of, you think, okay, I can see what he's trying to do here, and once we work on this, it'll get better. We're getting further away from that, and that's the thing that's really worrying me. Rather than improving week on week, it seems to be getting worse week on week. So he needs a result. Sorry to harp on, but he needs a result, and he needs a performance at this team to show that what he's talking about and the style that he's trying to implement in that team is going to click at some point. And hopefully he'll do that with Nico Raskin in the team, because obviously he's a good player, and I wouldn't want to see him not feature now that he's here. If he's here, it's worthwhile getting our money's worth out of him. But yeah, it would just be good if we could just bury it, really.
Aye. The only sort of thing that I'm clinging to is that game against Pilsen at Ibrox. Raskin never played well. I think he came on at some point, but he certainly never started, and that was definitely the best bit of performance under Martin. So, I mean, talk about clutching at straws, but we need to cling on to something.
Yeah, I mean that was the night.
Was it Rothwell, Diamande, and Cameron?
I can't remember the team. Cameron was definitely in the team, and Rothwell was there. I can't remember if Diamande was in, but I think I was up in Lewis that week. Me and my son watched it in the Rangers club up in Lewis, and the two were like, this is quite enthusiastic for about 60 minutes of that game. You're thinking, yeah, this is obviously what he's trying to do. Just need to tweak it, need to sharpen it up a wee bit. But we're a million miles away from that now. We've went completely the other way. And that game against Celtic, okay, the heart was there. There was a bit more fight and a bit more determination. But in terms of, threat, I mean, I might be wrong here, but no shots in target for the whole 90 minutes from that game out. And that, as I said, I think that's a pretty poor Celtic team at the moment. So yeah, I was really despondent after that game, I have to say. I picked myself up, and then I'm on the way back down again. So hopefully they can pick me back up tomorrow. That performance.
I mean, the thing that was really annoying about that in terms of attacking play against Celtic is that look at some of the players that we did have on the park. We had Gassama, who started pretty well, I thought. Mikey Moore, who, in his own words, wants to be one of the best players in the world. Miovski, who, to be fair, I thought Miovski done well. I thought he he tried hard and he was closing down and chasing everything. But again, you know, you need service as a striker. The midfield, Asgard, certainly going forward, he just didn't seem up to speed. And I'm sick of like going into Old Firm games thinking, oh, what can we do to stop Callum McGregor? We need to try and, for me, focus on our strengths. And we mentioned it off air. I mean, he scored 4 goals midweek against, I mean, to be fair, Moldova, one of the best international sides that you've seen ever. So, I mean, that's another thing we can cling on to into. Just waiting for this to be clipped up by Celtic fans.
It's I'm quite hopeful for Asgard. I've got to say, I think he could come good. I mean, I think you're right. I think creatively in the Celtic game he didn't do much, but I think he did do a good job on sort of taking McGregor out of the game a wee bit. You know what I mean? I thought he man-marked him pretty well, but it was just a lack of threat. You know what I mean? And that's what needs to be addressed now. It's, you know, obviously defensively we've been really, really poor. You know, that Bruges game over in Belgium was the sort of the low point and all that. I mean, defensively we were just horrific that night. You know, we looked a bit tighter against Celtic, a bit more organised, but then the final third was really, really poor. And you know, when you think of that performance 2 weeks ago, it's like, you know, when you consider some of the guys have been away in international duty, I mean, how much time have they had to really improve things? You know what I mean? How can we go from what we saw against Celtic 2 weeks ago, and you know, the internationalists have only been back maybe Thursday, Friday, so maybe a couple of sessions. So yeah, I'm not hopeful. I mean, we'll see tomorrow, but it's. I mean, Martin talked today about, you know, a feeling of, you know, refocused and regrouping and all that at training and stuff like that. But he's been saying that for a while now. He's been saying it'll improve, and it hasn't. I think if he doesn't get something tomorrow, then he's under real pressure, I think.
I mean, to be honest, he's lost a lot of people already, and even if we win tomorrow, it's probably not going to be enough for some people. But I think what is 100% certain, if we don't win tomorrow, regardless of even performance, but if we don't get the 3 points tomorrow, I think for 95% of the fans, you know, it's done. It'll be at that point where it was with Michael Beale after that Aberdeen game at Ibrox, where it's just like, you know, it's done. Just put him and us out of our misery, and get it done with. I mean, my prediction was a few weeks ago that this isn't going to work out with Russell Martin, and I hope I'm wrong. I want to be proved wrong, but again, I'm not going to be one of these like ultra negative people that just constantly getting people. Look, I don't rate him, right? I've been quite clear about that, right? But at the same time, there are people out there that it just seems that any wee thing that happens or any wee thing that he says or does, they're just going to jump on it and jump on it and jump on it. And I suppose it's the online world, and maybe sometimes you struggle nowadays to sort of decipher between the real world and the online world in terms of fan reaction and how fans actually feel. Because I mean, to be fair, some of the stuff at Ibrox that I've heard is, I mean, it's been translated into the fans' actions during games as well in terms of booze and stuff like that. But I mean, there are just people that are just desperate, just so desperate for everything to be bad and for everybody to fit in this, that, and the next thing. And I'm just, I mean, what's the point in even going? Do you know what I mean? Like, Ibrox will be sold out tomorrow. But you know for a fact, as soon as Hearts score, as soon as I'm saying it as if it's going to happen.
Yeah.
If Hearts get an early goal, the place is going to go absolutely berserk. And I'd never be that guy to try and tell fans how to think or act or anything like that, because I'm kind of the belief you spend your money, you know, you can kind of do what you like within reason. But again, it's like there's just so many people that are just desperate for this guy to fail. And as much as I think he will fail, I don't want him to fail because it's bad for everybody.
Yeah, it's and that impacts on your enjoyment of it. You know what I mean? I was really looking forward to this season at the start of it, and very quickly, you know, Ibrox became pretty toxic, and all of a sudden you're going to the games flat. You know what I mean? You're not going there with any sort of sense of purpose or a feeling of enjoyment. So yeah, it would be nice. You know, obviously, I think Celtic are playing on Sunday this week, aren't they? So
Yeah,
if we win tomorrow, we close the gap, put a wee bit of pressure on them, and it just it just lifts the mood a little bit. I think a really good performance would help in that as well. But it's difficult going to Ibrox at the now. It's because you've got the atmosphere around, Russell Martin, and fans being unhappy. The football hasn't been great, so it's just not been a great start to the season.
yeah. Kind of off topic in terms of the agenda. It's just something that I thought of the last few moments. With everything that's went on with Russell Martin, including the Raskin situation, even the Egeman situation as well, to be fair. I know he's done his interview in the last week, Kevin Farewell, but I mean, at what point does he step in and try and resolve some of these issues? Does he step in and try and resolve these issues? Because to my knowledge and to what I think we were all told is that Russell Martin is the head coach. He is in charge of training the players and putting out the team on the park. Everything else, Kevin Farewell is in charge of.
Mm-hmm.
So, the way that I see it, if there's a disagreement between the manager and a guy that's, well, he is your top asset in terms of what you could make, that is surely something that the sporting director needs to come in and resolve and say, look, either we sell him now, we offer him or whatever, and he just comes in and he has to make that decision. And it's the exact same, I thought, with the Egeman situation. And again, there's some things that you hear in the media, we all think, we're going to get 15, 20 million for Egeman, and then it turns out that he's got a £10 million release clause. And it was kind of similar with Aribo. Do you remember a couple of years ago? We were thinking, we're going to get 15 or 20 million for Aribo. Turns out that he only had a £10 million release clause as well. So it's kind of been a pattern where the messages that the club have filtered out through to their suggested friends or sources in media, then further down the line, it turns out to be absolute nonsense. But
you were never going to get that.
Yeah.
It's in terms of the relationship between Martin and Raskin, I would say that sits with Martin to fix. And if he can't fix it, or if he doesn't want to fix it, then it's up to Farewell to get Raskin out the door. On Farewell, the supporters that are sort of already demanding that Russell Martin sacked. I think it's difficult for Farewell to do that because it's his appointment, isn't it? So if he's getting rid of him so early, it's an indictment on his own sort of how he's done his job. So I think that's why I think Farewell will hold out in that. I think he'll hold out to the bitter end in terms of pulling the trigger on Russell Martin. But I thought he spoke well. The interview that came out just after the Celtic game, I thought he spoke quite well. At a time when as I said, I felt quite despondent after that Old Firm game. When I watched that, it did pick me up a little bit. I thought, right, okay, he said some things there that sort of give me some hope to sort of say, right, okay, let's give them a bit of time and all the rest of it. Obviously, the stuff that's come out today is sort of countered against that, but he's another one. Things need to start clicking soon. The thing that I find frustrating in all this, I think some of the business we've done looks pretty good. I thought all the wingers that we brought in, they all, Gassama, Antman, Moore, their first few games, they all looked great. And their form has dipped. I would say the only ones that have came in that I'm not overly happy with are obviously like Rothwell's looked a bit sluggish. And right back, Aaron's, he's looked really out of his depth at times. But other than that, I think most of the other signings look good, and the fact that the performances are so disjointed is really frustrating because I think some of the business we've done looks good on paper. So it'll be something that if results don't improve in the next week or two, if we don't get a win tomorrow, and if we go out, the League Cup next week to Hibs, there's questions are going to be asked at that point, and the board and Farewell have got a decision to make. So we'll see how it goes, but an interesting 2 or 3 weeks coming up, I think.
No, well, it always is at Rangers, isn't it? It's always interesting, never boring. You can gaze at least. But I just think, from an executive level, we just seem to be so reactive. And does Farewell even hold the power to sack the manager, or would that lie with Patrick Stewart? I I don't know, but he's another one that you kind of go, I mean, he's been in the door for about a year now, and I mean, he stood up for Philippe Clement last season after a couple of really bad results. Queen's Park basically making a public statement saying that we're backing him, and then not even like a fortnight later, he's sacking him. And then with this appointment as well, again, it's all the right words. And I know you said Kevin Felwell speaks well, and I suppose he has only been in the job for a couple of months, so are we still at that point where it's too early to judge? But how many people, Colin, over the last few years have spoke well and they say the right things? I mean, I'm just sick and tired of people talking. I just want the team to go out and win games, and I want people to do their jobs and just go out and win games of football and win us trophies again. That's all the fans want. That's all the fans care about. We've lusted after it for so long. We thought we were properly back on top after winning the league a few years ago. You know, that blew up in our face because we didn't push on after that. Celtic more than caught up with us again, and now it just feels like we're back to square one. Like the fans here were just so desperate for success, but it just seems like from all angles the last few years we're just so reactive to things. There doesn't seem to be any proper planning or anything like that in place. And one thing that really concerns me is, and I'm going to sound like a Rangers guy here, but the lack of Rangers men or Rangers characters in and around the club anymore. If you look at Russell Martin's team, all right, he played for Rangers, right? But let's be honest, he was a rubbish player for Rangers. He was in one of the worst ever, or possibly the worst ever Rangers top flight team in history. So, you know, he does, from a player point of view, he didn't get it. Okay, and the guys that he's brought in, they're all these guys from down south in England who, oh no, you know, Rangers, massive club, this, that, and the next thing. And then they come up here and they just don't know how to handle the pressure. How many players have we seen come up for England, Rangers and Celtic as well, where they've got that arrogance in them thinking, oh, the Scottish League's easy, we're going to squish it. And, you know, you've got guys like, you know, Felwell, who's came up from England, and yeah, he seemed to do decent enough at Wolves and Everton, but he's scouting guys and bringing in players like Sharmite, who, according to his data, would do well for Everton or would do well for Wolves. But just because you'd be a good player for Wolves or Everton doesn't mean you'd be a good player for Rangers. Now, in terms of talent and quality on paper, yeah, if you're good enough to play for Wolves or Everton nowadays, you should be good enough to play for Rangers. But it's not just about that. You need to have it up here. And too many players that we have had in the last few years just don't have it up there. And that is something that you can do all the analysis, all the statistics in the world. You can't teach people to have that up there. And it's so hard to sort of to weed out those players, I think.
I think that's a kind of vicious circle, though, because I think part of the problem is we've not been a winning team. So these players aren't coming into a winning dressing room.
Yeah.
So they're not learning how, you know, because it's I always feel that the sort of character side is it's either in you or not, and playing at a club like Rangers will reveal it whether you've got it or not. But I think you've got a better chance of revealing it if you go in there into a dressing room that's used to winning and has that mentality. And so you're seeing that every day in training. You're seeing how these players that win trophies, you know, commit to things and how they apply themselves to their jobs. If you're coming into a dressing room that's not been successful over the last 4 or 5 years, you know, what habits are you picking up? And I do think part of me does wonder, you know, when you were talking about the Raskin Martin thing earlier on, again, this camp or that camp, through all this, part of me has wondered for a while now that there's something rotten in that dressing room. You know what I mean? There's just an attitude. And maybe part of this whole process and why things are so bumpy now is they're trying to root it out. They're just trying to get rid of all these people that they think are not behaving in the way that's required. That might not be the case, but I have wondered for a while now about that dressing room, and I think the Egerman thing. I think that was a little bit of an example of what I'm alluding to here. You know, coming back late for pre-season, overweight, you know, refusing to come on the pitch, all that kind of stuff. You just wonder, is there a lack of professionalism, leadership, all that kind of stuff in that dressing room at times, and maybe Martin and his coaching team have come in and recognised it straight away. And why things are so bumpy now is they're trying to root it out. So without the full picture, you can't comment. That's why I'm still kind of half-minded to give Martin a chance. You know what I mean? It's like maybe he is having to deal with a lot more than we're aware. Maybe the things are so bad in that dressing room that, he's, how was it he referred to it a couple of weeks ago, like trying to turn a tankard around and all that kind of stuff. It's going to take time and all that. But I still need to see evidence on the park that his style of play, that what he's trying to implement is there, and at the moment it's not, and that's what's going against him. You know what I mean? So whatever he's trying to deal with off the park, he might not get the chance to finish it if he doesn't even start hinting at what his team's capable of on the park.
No, you're spot on with that, and that is as well another thing that I'm maybe just clinging towards. It. I do think there is a rot in that dressing room, and I think that was evident last season more than anywhere. You seen us go out and batter Fenerbahce, beat Celtic a few times, and then losing at home to St Mirren, losing at home to Motherwell, losing at home to Hibs. You can't tell me that that's, a tactical thing or anything. That, for me, that's a professionalism issue with the players. Clement needs to take part of that responsibility as well. But, for me, it was still mostly on the players for last season. It's just we're just a bit scared because it's been a lot of this stuff has been going on for so long, and look, I know why people are vehemently backing Raskin. I mean, I like Raskin. I think he's a cracking player. He's got a lot of potential, but I mean, somebody did make a good point the other day online where he said, I mean, it's not exactly Barry Ferguson that we're talking about here, and it's the same with Egan, we're not talking about Ali McCoist. We are talking about players here who, they're good players, and they probably will go ahead and have good careers elsewhere. But I mean, they've won nothing. I mean, even the League Cup that we won when Raskin was here, I don't think he played a game in the whole tournament, so he wasn't even eligible for a medal. So he's won nothing. He can't turn around and say, "Oh, I've achieved this and I've achieved that," because he's no. And by the way, that's not all his fault because he's played in some pretty poor teams. But at the same time as well, I think you just seen glimpses of Raskin here and there, and then that game against Celtic at New Year, that's really when he burst into life.
Yeah.
And then when Barry came in, I think Barry definitely get the best out of him for that sort of 3 or 4 months. But that was it. We had a sort of 5 or 6 month burst with Raskin. He's been here for 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
So to only have a good 6 months out of 2.5 years, that's not good enough. That's no Rangers quality. That's certainly not Rangers captain quality and building the team around him quality. So I can understand how, people think he's a good player and stuff like that, and he is, and I do like him, but at the same time, I think we also need to try and be a wee bit,
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that he's underperformed in the time he's been here. You know what I mean? I agree with you. It's
over the piece.
It's only in the last few months that you could say that he's sort of hit the levels that you were expecting of him. I thought initially when Clement came in, there was a few games when Clement first came in that he looked like he'd picked up, but then he fell out the team again. So yeah, it's if you're backing Raskin in this scenario, there's not a lot there to back, to be honest with you.
We're back in Rangers here. We're back in Rangers. Well, we do have a game tomorrow. We may as well start talking about it. Always like to ask who would you start tomorrow, but I mean, it could be anybody. I don't know what he's going to go with. I think Cornelius will come in. I
would like to see that, to be honest with
you.
Yeah. And seeing that goal through the week, you're thinking, Tav's been really good on the set pieces over the years. He's provided a few special moments, but there has been a staleness about it for a while now. You know what I mean? You just know that every time we get a free kick, Tav's going to take it. So, yeah, seeing that he's got that in his locker, it gives us another option at set pieces and stuff like that. So I would like to see him come in tomorrow, I must admit. I think the midfield three will be, I think it'll be Rothwell, Dio and Asgard. I think he'll go with Miovski up front and Gassam and probably Antman. I think that'll be your sort of front 4 or 5 or whatever. So we'll see what comes tomorrow. But I think Cornelius is the one I would like to see starting tomorrow, because from what I've read and what I've seen of him, and obviously, the Gigas had. I thought he's another one that started well, but he's looked a wee bit nervous at times recently. So if we want to get 3 points tomorrow, maybe just get that nervousness out the back four, and maybe putting him in there will do that.
No, I mean, it's a pretty decent front 4 or 5 there on paper, and I keep saying on paper, but like, these are players that should be more than capable of beating. I mean, at least 11 other teams in Scotland and the Scottish top flight. Do you know what I mean? You're talking about internationals there, guys like Gisama who've been in the PSG youth setup and what have you, and they're starting to do it for us in Europe. Miofsky, who I think that's a great piece of business. I was absolutely buzzing when we signed him, because I think it was one of those ones, again, such an obvious signing at the time. I kind of understand why we didn't sign him a couple of years ago, because it's Aberdeen and they would have probably wanted about 15 million off us for him. So I can see why, but he's been away for a season, and we've basically got him back at a cut price fee, and it also means that they don't get any money as a sell on as well. So it's a double whammy, which I'm quite pleased with. But he's a guy, he knows the league, he scores goals. And I think sometimes calling like the most obvious signings maybe are the right ones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he got much service in the Old Firm game, but his work rate was good. You know what I mean? And something I liked about him was there was 2 or 3 occasions, he's took the ball and laid it off, and he's absolutely bursting a gut to get a return, to get up that park and get in position. I don't think we've seen that for a while. You know what I mean? I like Dessers. I did. I love Dessers. I loved his attitude, and he scored goals. But there was just something about Miofsky that day in terms of a couple of these things that I thought, if we can get him the service, if we can really get the ball into him, he'll get his goal. So hopefully, I think he'll start tomorrow. So you never know. He'll maybe get his first goal tomorrow and get off and running.
I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but as soon as kickoff was taken, I can't mind the Celtic player, but he ran right into him, and he didn't win the ball cleanly, but the Celtic player hit it off him, and it was almost like that press worked like straight away. Turn it, and you're like, that brilliant, like 3 seconds into your debut against Celtic. And I do think the aggression was there, the fight was there, the stuff that we want to see as Rangers fans. But again, that is like the very basic stuff. Like, that is stuff that you should be doing anyway as a Rangers player. I know we mentioned Rothwell there. It has shown that he does have something about him. And one thing that I did like about him when he came on against Celtic for like his 10-15 minute cameo, he was getting stuck right in. There was a couple of wee times he was putting his boot up and stuff like that. Desperate to win the ball, and you're like, yes, get into them, son, and all that, So, like, I do think, you mentioned it earlier, we've signed good players. I think on paper, we do have a good squad. I would probably argue that on paper, we've got the best squad in the league. It's just the manager, for me, that's kind of put me off thinking that we're going to do this and we're going to do that. But, we need to see something tomorrow. Like, I can't explain enough how desperate we just need this tomorrow, because we go in tomorrow, we win, we put in a good performance. He's maybe not justified with their asking comments and leaving out the squad, but it cools it down a wee bit. It gets people off his back, and then if they drop points on the Sunday as well, which, as I said earlier, their supporters are absolutely desperate to happen. They want to drop points. They want everything bad to happen to them, because that's just what they're like. And they need to blame everyone else for their problems. If it's not us, it's not the SFA, it's their own board. And I see they're backing Brendan Rodgers again after wanting him to pass away a few years ago. So that's good for them. But the tide can change, the feelings can change, and who knows what can happen after that. But we desperately need to see something tomorrow. It's all well and good talking about how bad they are, but we've got to do our job.
Yeah, I mean, what's the phrase? It's a job of a journey of a million miles starts with a single step. So that single step can be tomorrow. You know what I mean? You get that win. I mean, it won't put out all the fires that Russell Martin and the club are facing at the moment, but it'll quell a lot of the stuff if they then go on and beat Hibs, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you start to get a bit of momentum. You know, if Russell Martin goes on and wins the next 4 or 5 games domestically, then all of a sudden he'll find, especially if there's performances there, you know, if there's decent performances and we can see, you know, evidence of this football that he talks about every week in press conferences, and all of a sudden all this noise will start to disappear, and all of a sudden, you know, Nico Raskin will start to feel a bit isolated, you know what I mean? Because he'll then not have a leg to stand on, because the support won't care whether he's playing or not. If we're winning, no one really cares about Nico Raskin, and that's the be all and end all. But as we've said a few times tonight, it needs to start tomorrow. You know, I think a win is essential. I think a performance would be really, really helpful. You know, I mean, a win and a good performance would just help the whole mood of the place. And then, as I said, it puts a wee bit of pressure for them going into Sunday. So yeah, but they need to get it. If he doesn't get it tomorrow, then the noise increases and he's in a really difficult space.
No, you're right. And I mean, Ibrox and Rangers, when things are going bad, it's the worst place in the world. But when things are going good, it's by far the best place in the world. Yeah. So Russell Martin's been there basically just through all bad times. I don't think he's had very many big or good moments during his time at Rangers as a player or a manager. But as you say there, if he can get 4 or 5 wins together, and you know, we see what happens with them, you know, the tide can turn. Hopefully we're not being deluded here, but you know, we're trying to be a bit positive on a Friday night. Come on.
Yeah, it's, as I said, we'll find out tomorrow. I mean, I'm a wee bit despondent about how things have started, and the sort of atmosphere at Ibrox and all that kind of stuff. But you know, tomorrow's another day. So if they get the 3 points, then that might just be the start of something. But I think he needs it tomorrow. It's imperative that he gets it tomorrow, because if he doesn't, as I said, the noise will just increase and he's in a really sticky wicket.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think that's a good point to wrap up on there, Colin. So thanks very much for joining me tonight, as always. I've got Rob, Alan and Stuart Weir on Sunday to review what happens at Ibrox tomorrow, and they'll also look ahead to that big cup game against Hibs next week. So Colin, thanks very much for joining me, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers. I was struggling to unmute there. Yeah. Cheers, Craig. Thank you.
No worries. Pleasure as always, and thanks to the viewers at home. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.